Sikeleli Africa malupaganyisu pondolwayo izwa imithandazo yethu.
A very good morning to everyone. From me, your host, Alicia Jali. Welcome to yet another exciting edition of your favorite program, Media Monitor, live on the SABC 24-hour news channel. In our topics today, the 2-month wait for the repatriation of the remains of victims of TB Joshua's church collapse is finally over. The latest is 74 victims' bodies are currently on their way to the Waterkloof Air Base right here in South Africa. And of course, later on in the program, we will be talking to SABC Deputy Political Editor Mahlatsi Gallens, who is currently in Lagos. We're also going to talk about the winding up of the Farlam Commission of Inquiry into the shootings at Marikana. As you know, this week, all the unions and the representatives for the police, as well as lawmen, tabled their closing statements to Judge Farlam. We'll also talk about the expulsion of NUMSA from COSATU. The big news this week, of course, being Mr. Vave's letter to the leaders of COSATU. In other news making headlines today, the charges against the man accused of killing Tegrin Morris were withdrawn, including Senzo Meyiwa's murder accused. We also say a huge congratulations to Bafana for qualifying on merit for the AFCON after defeating Sudan 2-1 at the Moses Mabhida Stadium. And of course, kudos to the Springboks for their 31-28 victory over England in a thrilling rugby test. In other news now, Equatorial Guinea is the new host of the 2015 Africa Cup of Nations after Morocco was stripped from hosting. And we also pay our deep condolences to heart surgeon and anti-apartheid campaigner Marius Bernard, who died at his home in Hermanus in Cape Town. Today's call-in topic is the remains of 74 South African victims of the Nigerian church tragedy are expected to land in the country this morning. Do share your thoughts regarding this topic by calling us on the following numbers. It's +2711 714 6843, 714 6847 and 714 6857. Or interact with us on Twitter at SA Media Monitor, as well as on Facebook. It's Media Monitor, including our email address, which is of course mediamonitor@sabc.co.za. Very good morning to you. All right, now joining me in studio today is SABC's contributing editor, Mr. Vuyo Mvoko. Let's first take a look at what is making news headlines today. Mr. Mvoko, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us in studio, sir.
Morning, Lisa.
All right, let's first take a look at all the newspaper headlines that are making waves this morning. Of course, let's see if we can get it on the video wall there. It is the Weekend August. That's our paper that we're reviewing from Cape Town. Of course, there it is. Let's start with the Sunday Times. The Sunday Times is leading with, "Now you will learn." We're going to look closer into those stories in a little short while. Let's take a look at another leading paper today. It's City Press, and let's see what they're leading with today. The house that fell apart, of course, and that is the EFF story, and we will be talking about it in a short while. We're also going to be reviewing the Weekend August. That is from Cape Town, and of course there we just want to talk about nothing but the nice news. Bafana, as well as the Springboks winning on all their matches yesterday. Mr. Mvoko, a very good morning to you. So let's first talk about what's going on in City Press today. City Press's headline says, "The house that fell apart." Now, the house that fell apart, Malema has warned of the loss of lives that have been caused by police after Thursday's scuffle in Parliament. Mr. Mvoko, what do you make of the statement at this point?
I mean, what happened in Parliament this week should make every South Africa feel at the very least uncomfortable. Because one, it's unprecedented, and irrespective of who's right and who's wrong, I don't think it bodes well for our democracy. I think it has the ability or the potential to actually erase a lot of things that we've done as a nation, especially over the past 20 years, and taking into account, of course, that the past 20 years were as a direct result of people's struggles against apartheid and against colonialism. To be where we are today, I think everyone in that parliament should be asking themselves, how did we get here? And everyone should stand up and take stock and say, what are the implications of what we are seeing in parliament today? And before it's too late, we need to do something about it. Calls for leadership at all levels, across the board, as I say, irrespective of who's right and who's wrong.
I'm going to have to leave it there for now. We're going to continue with our discussions, but of course, the big news of the day is the repatriation of the 74 South Africans who died in the church collapse. And now our reporter, Griselda Lewis, is standing by with the latest. Griselda, what do you have for us at this stage?
Well, a very good morning to you, Alicia. Certainly a very important day for South Africa. A very sad day in the country. Of course, those 74 bodies that will be repatriated, we're expecting them to arrive here at the Waterkloof Air Force Base at about 9:30 this morning. Certainly going to give a lot of closure to these families who've waited for more than 2 months for their family members to return to South Africa and for them to give them a burial and find some closure relating to this disaster that took place in Nigeria. Well, earlier this morning, we saw the minister in the presidency, Jeff Radebe, was the first person to arrive. And much later after that, a second aircraft carrying the mass repatriation team that assisted with the repatriation of the 70 bodies, which will arrive here. Very exhausted bunch, I must tell you, but certainly saying a job well worth it, and that bringing closure to these families is certainly what is most important in this case. What will take place here today, as soon as that aircraft lands at about 9:30, we're expecting the 4 mortuary trucks, of course, to come off that aircraft and basically to be placed in a hangar, in a closed storage, where, of course, all the processes relating to health as well will need to take place. And, of course, at about 3 o'clock this afternoon, the official ceremony, of course, presided over by the Deputy President of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, who will, together with families here, families certainly we will get to see for the very first time, where they will share in their grief over what happened in Nigeria. They will be certainly quite difficult for them to see those mortuary vans. As we understand, there's also a dead march that will take place within this area as well. Certainly difficult. We don't think that there will be, in fact, there will not be a viewing of those bodies. We understand the Minister of Social Development, Batabile Dlamini, who spoke to the SABC a bit earlier, said she had explained to the families in a meeting that she had with them yesterday. She went on to describe their grief as well, saying that certainly, counselling would need to take place way after the ceremony is done, in that these families have waited for so long to bury their loved ones. But the minister in the presidency, Jeff Radebe, saying that it was also difficult for him when he visited the site of that building collapse, saying that it touched him personally. And we've heard from many of the other team members as well of this mass repatriation team that were in Nigeria, saying it was quite emotional to be there, to see somebody's mother, to see somebody's father in that condition, but certainly will add to closure today for South Africa and the families, of course, when those bodies do touch down at about 9:30 here at the Waterkloof Air Force Base.
All right, Griselda, you've just cleared that up for us, because people were really confused as to what time is the actual plane carrying the bodies set to arrive. So it is 9:30, you say?
Well, that's correct, Alicia. That's the expected time that we've been given here at the Air Force Base.
All right. Well, we will be crossing back live to our reporter there, Griselda Lewis, as more developments happen at this stage. All right, Vuyo, let's get back to our discussion now. Let's look at the weekend. All right, let's start with the Times. It says, now you will learn. Now, there's allegations, of course, that have come out that the president has told or instructed his party MPs to actually not be accommodating and not to tolerate hooliganism, but apparently this was actually made only public now, but it actually came through in September. Vuyo.
Well, look, I mean, I don't think we can really tell whether it's the ruling party or whether it's the opposition parties, how to respond to what they deem to be provocation from one another. But I think what should be more important for everyone is the effect or the impact whatever their actions, that the impact of their actions on the institutions of democracy, the impact of their actions on how the populace then comes to regard Parliament. You know, the fight against corruption, which everyone says they are committed to, in everything that is happening, in how they are conducting themselves, is that message or commitment not lost? In the process, because whatever view you hold about whether who's right and who's wrong in this, at the end of the day, South Africans will remain with a perception about who is committed or not committed to fighting corruption, which is a scourge that threatens to undo everything that we've done over the years, for which a lot of people laid their lives, for which a lot of people continue to carry scars, physical and emotional, given our past. Now, what is this episode doing to that struggle? What messages is it sending about whether, in fact, they may have laid their lives or they may have sacrificed in vain? And I think if we take our eyes off the ball, it is easy to be caught in the petty little squabbles about who's right and who's wrong. I think leaders should be magnanimous right now before it is too late, and actually refocus their energies, but also refocus the nation on what matters, on the underlying issues, on what gave rise to what we are seeing now, and irrespective of who's right and who's wrong, actually begin to correct the wrongs that have come as a result of what has happened and what continues to happen.
We're looking at the two headlines, of course, the house that fell apart and now you will learn. What does that say to the person that's actually reading these newspapers on a Sunday morning?
See, South Africans will remain confused because they still do not know what the real issues are. You know, if you look at the story or the issue that started or that sparked all of this, the chaos we've seen over the past few months, has the ANC, for example, carried itself the way it should? Has it been able to actually speak to the core issues and left no doubt in the minds of South Africans as to, one, what the real issues are, two, and whether as a leader of society it is addressing itself to the core issues? And I think to a very large extent, history may just judge the ANC very harshly on this one. Hence, I'm saying it's not too late for everyone to actually refocus their energies, to refocus their minds, even though they may think they are actually right. And the same applies to the opposition, as a matter of fact.
Thank you so much to our contributing editor, Mr. Mvoko, right here. While the other news on the weekend, August, from Cape Town was, of course, they were just highlighting the Springbok and Bafana's win. And, of course, that honorary match for Senzo Meyiwa went just as expected by most South Africans. Well, we're going to take a very quick ad break. And when we return, we're going to discuss the repatriation ceremony. Today's call-in topic is the remains of 74 South African victims of the Nigeria church tragedy are expected to land in the country this morning. Do share your thoughts and comments. Stay with us. This is Media Monitor.
Our new waterproof smartphone takes superior photos even in low light. Has PlayStation 4 remote play and up to 2 days battery life. Don't settle for good. Demand great. The new Sony Xperia Z3 series.
The session musicians, you want a particular sound on your record. Who do you get? Abo Butemp, Abo Victor Masond, Abo Godfrey Mqina. So these are the people who play a very, very vital role in making us.
The South African Horror Fest is the only inclusive event of its kind over Halloween season. It screens a host of exciting horror or thriller movies from around the world.
Shishani achieved stardom when she won a live music competition in Namibia titled Last Band Standing in 2012.
Join Musam Khalipi on Afro Showbiz every Saturday at 19:30 CAT.
SABC News, we've got Africa covered.
Africa, malupaganyisu pondolwayo izwa imithandazo.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. Well, 74 remains of the 85 South African victims of the collapsed synagogue Church of All Nations in Nigeria are due to arrive in the country shortly. Let's now see what our reporter Mahlatsi Gallens has done in her report for us. All right, we will be trying to get hold of Mahlatsi as soon as we can get hold of her in Lagos. But Vuyo, let's talk about this now. The cause of the accident, do you think we're really going to find out anytime soon? Because there's so many scenarios that are coming from all sorts of directions at this stage. It's almost 2 months after the accident now.
Well, look, I mean, there is an inquiry in Nigeria that is going on, and hopefully it will give us, it will shed light into what actually happened. But for me, right now, that is probably the last thing on people's minds. What is important now is for the families to get the closure that they need. And how this whole thing has been handled, how the Nigerian government has behaved in this regard, I think is disgraceful. How the church, TB Joshua's church, conducted itself. Yes, later on, they hauled their spin doctors to come and talk about, you know, what actually happened, that, you know, there's foul play and all of that. But when this thing started, when very basic questions were being asked, they were not there to deliver that. They did try to sort of reclaim that lost ground. They started contacting the families. There have been promises of supporting them well beyond this episode, which I think is good. But whatever conspiracy theory there may be, their handling of this thing right from the start leaves a lot to be desired. And I think no amount of spinning and going back to who may have caused this, may have been, you know, like suspecting all this foul play will actually make up for that. But give them credit that to the extent that they've sort of tried to recover that lost ground and to try and do something, meet the families and help them to that point of closure. I think it is something worthy of being highlighted. But the South African government as well, I know they have been at pains trying to explain that they have been frustrated at every turn by the Nigerian government, but that too I don't think is good enough. I don't think whether it's all sort of hidden in the whole diplomacy in trying to be, not to be seen to be attacking another country or another state, but I think they could have done a lot more to actually call a spade at times, and I think that would have gone some way in actually saying to South Africans, we have really left no stone unturned. And at this point, yes, they have done a lot of good things. They have contacted the families and they've tried to put them at ease, but I don't think it has been good enough. I think sometimes you just have to tell the truth, even though you may not necessarily be answering all the questions. And I think that would have gone some way in actually making those. Yes, it would not have replaced the loved ones that these people have lost, but I think it would have gone some way in saying they have indeed done the best that they could. They have indeed done or left no stone unturned. And I think diplomacy sometimes
Vuyo, you speak about the truth here. A lot of people that have also called in during, since the tragedy happened, and everybody's been saying that TB Joshua has not accepted any responsibility in the matter. Are we ever going to get his side of the story in the media?
Well, so far we haven't. It's been difficult to even get him to speak. He has had every opportunity in the world to actually put his side of the story out there, and he actually hasn't, And then you ask yourself that this man of God that so many people believe in, I do not believe in some of the things that a lot of people believe in that have sort of given rise to people being there. But who am I to sort of pass judgments? And that's not what this thing is about. It is not about whether you believe that people went there for the right reason. People have every right to go where their hearts, where their minds, where their belief takes them, But the way TB Joshua and his church have handled this thing has, in many respects, raised more questions than it has answered, and that, for me, is what is more important, and is what concerns a lot of people. Why aren't they coming forward with the information about, for example, how that church was built? Did it go through all the normal processes that a building of that nature has to go through before it is being built? Did it comply or conform to the safety standards that are required of such a building before you go to the conspiracy theory? And I think those are the more fundamental questions that the church should have responded to, instead of coming up with the conspiracy theories, whether they are true or not.
Speaking of conspiracy theories, let's hear from a family member on the line. Vuyo, Rendani, are you on the line with us? Thank you so much for joining us. Please share your views.
Yeah, I am on the line.
Yes, Rendani, please go ahead. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Is there any question from your side that I must answer?
Yes, sir. Please tell us your views about how this was handled. Are you happy with the manner that was the issue was handled by the South African government in terms of returning the bodies to South Africa?
Okay. From my side of view, I cannot say there is anything wrong, because these people were following procedures, and the Nigerian government, I think, was doing everything its way, not the South African way. If they allowed the South African people to go there and help them, the repatriation process would be faster than it took. You see, on my side, we had to wait as there were two waits, okay? And then the first one was to wait as to whether our relatives were on the list of those who died. And then after ascertaining that, we had to wait for this 2 months, isn't it? So you do not become totally happy when you still have this vacuum in between. Now that everything has gone okay, it's all right. in as far as TB Joshua is concerned, I don't blame him that much. Nor do I blame God. You see, we cannot blame God. Everything goes according to time. We only know the day we were born. We don't know when are we going to get gone from this earth. So, to me, as a Christian, I believe that everything has been scheduled according to God.
All right, thank you so much to Rendani, one of the family members, saying, well, he's basically happy with the whole process because he believes that the South African government was doing everything they possibly could. Let's see some of the tweets that you have sent us in regards to this topic now. Let's see Mdu B. Kumalo says, we as South Africans are thankful for what our government has done to put a stop on this long waiting for our remains. Thank you so much, Mdu B. Kumalo there. Mazwaivo Klega says, finally, long overdue, but the family will find closure at last. Thank you so much to our loyal viewer there, Mazwaivo Klega. Tsepo Malatsi says, about bloody time, I wonder if they're in a state that they can see them and still be identifiable. That's, of course, playing to the rumors there. Vue, let's talk about that. Those rumors that what could have happened to the bodies in 2 months. Apparently the conditions in that place aren't that favorable.
Well, not at all. I mean, we've had stories about the conditions of the morgues there and the fact that, to leave a body for this long and someone who didn't die from natural causes, building fell on top of people. So that would have done damage on its own. And you keeping them for 2 months in less than ideal conditions, it is bound. I mean, those bodies cannot possibly be in a good state at all. You're going to add to the trauma of the families because you are now going to tell them, or as the government has been trying to do, to persuade them to say, look, it's better if you don't see these people. And you know how it is. People are used to actually seeing their loved ones before they bury them. That is going to add to the trauma. And one is not for a second trying to hold our government responsible for that. One is not trying to say TB Joshua killed, those people. But you are talking about things that people could have done to lessen the pain. You're talking about things that could have made people to really say, yes, they were not responsible for the death of my loved one, but they did do their best to try and at least alleviate the suffering.
Vuyo, thank you so much for that. We're going to leave it there. And of course, there's still loads to talk about. We're going to take a quick ad break. And after that, it's our one-on-one segment with Nozintombi Mia to discuss the closing arguments of the Marikana Commission of Inquiry. Details with Criselda, of course, at the Waterkloof Air Base, still coming through as soon as the bodies touch down. Do stay tuned to Media Monitor on SABC News.
Kosi sikeleli Afrika malupa.
Guinea is reopening an Ebola clinic in its remote southeast in an effort to prevent sick nationals seeking better treatment elsewhere.
The new labor law also seeks to clamp down on violent strikes by holding a trade union liable for violence committed by its members during a strike.
The new canal is set to boost annual revenues to about $13 billion by 2023. It's part of a larger project to expand port and shipping facilities around the canal.
This is Vijagas's 4th victory on the PGA Tour.
That's all the weather that I have for you for now. Stay tuned.
For all your business news, catch news at 1 every day. Be informed.
SABC, sharing 20 years of inspiration.
Sikeleli Afrika malupaganyisu pondolwayo.
Welcome back to Media Monitor, and of course the big news of the day, we are waiting the arrival of the 74 South Africans who died in the TB Joshua Church collapse in Nigeria. Joining us now is SABC reporter Nozintombi Mia, who's here to tell us a bit more about the closure and the final arguments at the Marikana Commission. But before we do that, the Marikana Commission of Inquiry concluded its hearings after 2 years of attempting to establish what happened during the violent wage strike at Lonmin's Platinum Mine back in August 2012. Let's take a look at this insert compiled by reporter Ms. Nozintombi Mia.
As the inquiry wraps up, the police's role in the Marikana events and their carrying of weapons have been defended. Lawyers for injured miners called for criminal prosecutions against several prominent individuals. But police lawyers argue it would be surprising if the commissioners support this. Lawyers for injured miners argue the killing of 2 policemen was the smoking gun that led to 34 miners being shot dead days later. In closing statements, evidence leaders called for reconciliation.
There should be some memorializing of what happened, and that it must be that the memorial must be a memorial for all.
Finalized their recommendations to President Jacob Zuma.
Adjourns for the last time.
Ms. Nozintombi Mia, welcome to Media Monitor. Now, of course, we've been waiting on today forever, 300 days to try and find out what really happened, of course, at the Marikana Commission of Inquiry. Do you think that the Commission achieved this, Nozintombi?
Well, we certainly hope that the Commission will show us that they've achieved some sort of way forward come March next year, when the judges hand over the recommendations to the president on all the evidence that was presented before them. It certainly is a very sad weekend for South Africa, especially considering with the repatriation. But I also think with the fact that the bodies are being repatriated and the fact that the commission has concluded, we're starting to see some sort of forward movement in South Africa in terms of getting closure for all the families who've been affected by these different tragedies that have happened in their lives. And we're hoping that the judges and the commissioners will be able to give closure to those families of the victims of the Marikana massacre.
Vuyo, from an editor's point of view, the 300 days of the Farlam Commission, do you think that the people got their answers?
Well, they may not have gotten the answers, but I think it did go some way and a long way in really trying to put into perspective some of the things that happened on that day, but also, I think, in my view, to also expose some of the absurdities of our democracy, the things we've taken for granted, and I think it has. I'm hoping that it will have pricked the consciences of so many people in saying sometimes you may not go out of your way to sort of deliberately do things or do wrong, you know, but you should be a lot circumspect, that sometimes your actions or the things you say, sometimes the things you don't say even, may actually have repercussions for other people. It is not good that something like that happened, but now that it has happened, hopefully we'll all learn that of the sort of animals we've become post-1994. Are we carrying from where we left off during the days of struggle? Are we still being held together are we being driven by the same ideals, by the same values? Perhaps by accident rather than by will, certain things are happening. What are we doing to ensure that they do not have unintended consequences? The behavior of some of us, those of us who have money, those of us who have power,
You're quite right there,
needs to be,
right.
people really need to look at what they are doing.
Nozintombi, have we really become animals in this regard?
Well, I think that's a very interesting way for Voya to put it, but I do think that the final argument by the lawyers for the injured miners lends itself to what you're saying, where we see his list of 10 people that he feels he needs to take to the judicial system. We saw at the top of the list as Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, followed by Nathi Mthethwa, etc., etc. These are our political leaders, the leaders that were making the decisions from the top down during that time. So about us being animals or acting in a way that is not the same that we should be in this democracy, we certainly saw that we were not acting in that way. We should have shown some form of caring. We should have shown some form of humility in the face of 3,000 miners looking to get 12,500 rands. It shouldn't be right that 44 people died for 12,500 rands. That is not
irrespective
right.
of who was right and who was wrong.
Yes, in our democracy, in our fledgling democracy, we shouldn't have 44 people dying for 12,500 rands. And I think this is an opportunity for lawmen to step up as the employer and say, we were perhaps at fault. Perhaps we shoulder the biggest burden in this, and we're going to lead the way forward in how we treat our employees.
But not only that, I mean, for people, we know the ills of the mining industry.
Yes.
We know, I mean, that is why you have a government that has to have laws and make sure that those laws are followed. People who have made promises, are held. To those. I mean, why 20 years into democracy do we have these people who are not doing work, who keep on milking like our country?
But to interrupt you there, Vuyo, how accountable really can we hold the Deputy President or even Susan Shabangu or even the National Police Minister? How accountable can we hold them? Because they couldn't have foreseen the deaths of the 34
But then
people.
isn't that the reason that this whole commission is here and we're still looking for those answers till this day? And Nozintombi, you covered this commission for the 300 days, and I really want to get into in-depth here. Now, the biggest arguments here was, of course, came through from Mr. Dalimpofu. If you can just take us through what his recommendations were.
Well, Dalimpofu is recommending punitive measures. And the basic crux of what he's saying is that once the recommendations by the commissioners is finalized, he's looking to go to the judicial system in South Africa. And if that doesn't give them any sort of joy or clarity, they're looking to go to the ICC because they're looking at this entire process as a crime against humanity for the brutal way in which 34 miners were killed. That is such a critical argument that he's made, that in 20 years, since 1994, we're looking at going to the ICC for crimes against humanity in a democratic society, a democratic South Africa.
Nozintombi, hold that thought. Let me take Scott from Marikana on the line. Scott, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Your comment, please, sir.
Thank you very much. The thing that I want to comment about is the issue of, well, hello.
Yes, we're listening to you, Scott. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm saying if there was not the arrivals of the new, what we call AMCO and the leaders, let me say the leaders, that there was a split, in fact, within NUM itself. And I think that is the cause of losing the lives of our fellow brothers from Marikana. But my question, what I want to say is the blames now, they are shifting the blames now, where the families are looking for the right, for the answers. Then what I'm trying to say is the government must held responsible for killing innocent people, because I think in other hands also the unions also must also hold accountable. And also when Mr. X was testifying, he said they went somewhere where the Sangomas told them that the firearm the firearm will just, there will be water that is coming out of the firearms. So all those things, I think, they are the causes of losing a lot of people in Marikana. So the Falan Commission is not going to satisfy all the parties that are representing the families there. Somewhere, somehow, is going to be some irregularities on that commission.
Thank you so much.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you so much, Scott. Do you think that's true, Nozintombi?
Well, I think Scott definitely has a point. We saw in the past 18 months that there were half-truths, there were some blatant untruths that were said from all sides of the story. And I think the test will be the final recommendations by the Commission. Were they able to wade through all the cloak and dagger information that was given to them to really come to the truth? Or are they going to give us a surface explanation or a surface recommendation? Because it's not just the 34 miners that died on the 16th. Yes, it was tragic. It was devastating. And we should never have that. We should never have a police force killing 34 people in one single day, in less than a minute. We should never, ever have that in South Africa. But there was also the deaths of 10 other people in the days prior. And what recommendations will the Commission make in terms of getting justice for the families of those 10 people who died in the days before? So Scott certainly has a point, but really we will only find out the truth or the way forward in March next year.
And of course, Mr. Semenya, for the police, they're conceding that, saying that the Commission should find that the miners were yielding weapons against the state. What do you make of that?
But you see, I mean, for me, if someone believes that water is going to come out of a gun, instead of a bullet, in the same way that people believe that by going to, the synagogue, TB Joshua's synagogue in Nigeria, people get cured of AIDS, people get cured from diabetes and so on, even though there is no proof of those things. What I'm saying is that even if people believed that, they didn't have to die.
All right,
Exactly.
all right.
And I think that's the most important thing.
All right, we have to hold it there for you. There are visuals coming in through now, live from the Waterkloof Air Base of a plane that is currently hovering. There it is, as you can see. We're not really sure if it is the plane that is carrying the 74 remains of the South African victims. And of course, our reporter, Criselda Lewis, is standing by at the Waterkloof Air Base to give us, of course, the latest. And of course, this, we've just received confirmation that it is the plane that is carrying the 74 South Africans. Let's see what's going to happen. Criselda, what do you have for us there?
The arrival of those 70 bodies after 2 months of agonizing wait by the families and the friends, the loved ones of the South Africans who perished in that Nigerian guest house church building collapse. The plane, as you can see, was expected to touch down at about 9:30. Certainly that is the cargo plane carrying, of course, the 4 mortuary vans that are on board that cargo plane, as well as 4 vans as well with equipment. Now, what's expected to happen here once the plane has come to a standstill, Alicia, is that here behind me, if I can ask the camera person just to pan towards that direction, this is called a hangar, and that's basically where aircraft are stored. Those mortuary vans will be placed into that hangar for several hours, and of course you would know that at 3 o'clock this afternoon there will be an official ceremony presided over by the Deputy President of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, who will of course have an official a ceremony here together with the families who have been invited here, the families of the victims who will for the very first time see, not directly of course, because there will not be a viewing of the bodies, but certainly seeing those mortuary vans will evoke some kind of emotion from those family members. Certainly after a 2 72-month wait. The South African government says it has been a job well done. There were many challenges relating to the repatriation of these bodies, the Nigerian laws that needed to be adhered to, and various processes, of course. The time that it took for the rescue operation to take place in Nigeria before South Africa, of course, could go in and begin with the repatriation process. Just to walk you through a bit what is expected this afternoon, Alicia, in terms of the program, we're expecting the national anthem, first of all, a rendition of that, and there'll be an opening prayer by the South African Police Service chaplain, as well as welcoming remarks by Minister Radebe and the Deputy President, of course, Cyril Ramaphosa. Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi is also here as well, the Health Minister, as well as Bathabile Dlamini, who is the Social Development Minister as well. They've been here since this morning, indicating that, the repatriation is just but the beginning of where this phase is. There are many more processes that need to be followed. For example, the children who no longer have parents, whose parents have perhaps perished in this disaster, that the Department of Social Development will look into getting foster care for the children who have been affected by this, and continuing, of course, counseling for these families. Many people handle grief differently, so when that does happen, certainly the social workers will also be sent to the various provinces. As you would know, that just but one of the provinces has not been affected by this disaster, so the provincial officers of the Social Development Department quite have a lot on their hands from this point moving forward as well. But certainly a proud moment for South Africa, in grief though that so many people have perished while they were going to a place of worship, looking for spiritual intervention, and to die in such a tragic manner. But of course, these families saying, finally this has happened. We've spoken to them so many times, Alicia, if I could tell you, dating back to when we spoke to many of the family members who waited at the OR Tambo International Airport, braving early mornings at 5 a.m, waiting, not knowing, before the list had been released, about who these South Africans were. I understand as well a list will be read out here at the Waterkloof Air Force Base of the victims of this tragedy in Nigeria, and an acknowledgement, of course. And one has to say, with such a difficult task on their hands, the many people who participated behind the scenes, the health workers, the DNA specialists, who have all worked around the clock, as we understand, to make this happen, in conjunction, of course, with the Nigerian government, who of course gave the go-ahead just a few days ago to the South African government to repatriate. Of course, those that remain, we know that 74 bodies will come off that cargo plane, but the remainder of the bodies that are in Nigeria, the identification process needs to continue. And basically what a government is saying is that once all of that has come to a close, certainly those bodies will be repatriated as well. All of that communication, we understand, has been given to the families who will not be receiving their loved ones here today. I'm sure it's going to be very difficult for them to continue to wait, of course, but they might be given quite a lot of hope from that, in that they're seeing that these bodies have returned here to South Africa. I'm actually just going to turn a bit towards this direction. I think the plane is going to move a bit closer to where we are broadcasting from. It's coming up on the runway there. It has already landed, and quite a number of army officials here as well. Many from the South African armed forces as well, and basically all here to say that, South Africa, even though difficult, while there were many challenges in getting those bodies back to South Africa, finally all of that has arrived as well. But we'll continue to bring you more here from the Waterkloof Air Force Base as we receive the families as well a bit later on. We understand they're going to arrive here shortly after 1 o'clock, but we'll take a short break at the moment, or rather before we do that, let's just continue with our broadcast here. As you can see, there you have it, just a few kilometers from where we are, the cargo plane carrying the bodies of those 74 South Africans. On board just that aircraft, 4 mortuary vans carrying the remains of the South Africans that perished in that disaster, and also another 4 trucks with the equipment that was used in the repatriation process. I'm sure from the loved ones who might be watching this on television at this stage, it must be quite difficult for them to imagine what will take place here today. An official ceremony, of course, will get underway, and we see the aircraft moving a lot towards the hangar here where the mortuary vans will drive into and will be kept until 3 o'clock this afternoon, of course, when that ceremony death gets underway. Well, you must recall that there's also been quite staunch criticism over the disaster in Nigeria. We heard a bit earlier on today some of the teams that came off from the earlier aircraft saying that South Africa, of course, does need answers about what happened there, but there's been condemnation in Nigeria as well. You recall from the general manager at the Lagos State Building Control Agency, who basically faulted TB Joshua's church for not getting the correct structural approvals for that guest house, and basically saying that there was only approval to have 3 stories built there, yet it had about 5 at the time of the collapse. You'd know that TB Joshua's followers across the world refer to him as the prophet or the man of God. Thousands of people from all over the world visit his church to seek counsel, to be healed, to be exorcised of demons, and to receive miracles, and to have basically their future foretold. So basically what South Africa is saying here is that they need answers about what exactly happened in Nigeria. A bit earlier on when we spoke to the minister in the presidency, Jeff Radebe, who facilitated this repatriation process, of course, saying that answers are also needed from the Nigerian government. There is no bad blood between the two countries over this massive delay in the repatriation, but Nigeria too did play its role in ensuring and was committed to ensuring that those bodies did reach South Africa.
And of course, Criselda, are you aware at this stage if TB Joshua or any representative from the church is with this delegation at this moment?
Well, not according to our knowledge at this stage, Alicia. It's believed that none of the members or senior members of the synagogue are with this delegation here at this stage. It's a very closed reception that we're having here. Very few people have been allowed to enter the Waterkloof Air Force Base. It's just basically essential members of government who facilitated the repatriation process. Very few ministers as well have arrived at this stage. We only spoke to Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi a bit earlier on, the health minister, as well as Batabile Dlamini, the social development minister, but not much in terms of movement here. I think also in part to ensure that this is a dignified ceremony there, Alicia, and also to ensure that the indignity that has suffered so far of these bodies remaining on foreign soil for so long, all of that is rectified. We've been consistently hearing government saying that they want to ensure that dignity is restored, that the families of these loved ones are respected, and that this is supposed to be carried out like the tragedy that it is, the tragedy of so many South Africans dying in a place of worship where in actual fact they'd gone to seek spiritual healing and for many other reasons why they were there, but it all ended in tragedy, certainly. And many questions, of course, Alicia, still need to be answered about what really happened on that day, but you'll know that the church is maintaining that there were other sinister forces behind the collapse of that building.
All right. And of course, Criselda, you spoke about the forensic team that came in earlier. Were there any reps from Nigeria in that team?
Well, the South African team had been working, Alicia, very closely with a very small team, we understand, in Nigeria, assisting the South African mass repatriation team that consisted of DNA experts from as well as members from the health sector, from the South African Army's health wing as well, to assist in all of this. But no representatives at this stage from that repatriation team, the Nigerian repatriation team. Of course, all that we've seen is really a bunch of exhausted heroes and heroines who returned on the second flight much earlier this morning, of course, from several days of not sleeping, we understand, who have been assisting with the repatriation process. And, quite a feat, I must say, for them, in that they're saying it's something they needed to do for their country. And even though the task was quite difficult, Alicia, finally a positive response to it all, in that 74 of these South Africans have just touched down here at the Waterkloof Air Force Base on a day that we're really expecting to be so emotional. This is for the very first time, Alicia, that these families will get to see, well, not their loved ones, but of course the mortuary vans carrying mothers, fathers, sons, husbands and wives who are part of the people who are in this aircraft. So it's really going to be quite difficult. From here, of course, those bodies will go to the various mortuaries, and we know that the South African government has said that they would not advise for any of these families to do any body viewing because of the state of these bodies. It's been 2 months, and we understand due to somewhat poor conditions of state mortuaries in Nigeria, the bodies are really in a very decomposed state. So it would add further trauma to these families that have already suffered so much.
Thank you so much, Griselda. We will be getting back to you shortly because we have to let Mr. Vuyo Mvoko go. But Vuyo, I understand you are going through to the ceremony. Please tell us what you're going to do there.
Well, we will, of course, be broadcasting that ceremony, which Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa will be presiding over live with Griselda from Waterkloof Air Force Base. That will be after 12 or thereabouts. So we'll be broadcasting that live, and hopefully with more sort of the latest information on what's going to happen next, and where do these bodies go after this, how are the families going to, whether in fact the families will be able to see their loved ones, but some are insisting. But I think government has put a great deal of effort into trying to make them understand that perhaps in the state they are in, it's better if they don't. And from what we've picked up so far, the families are in fact understanding that the combination of the tragedy itself and how the impact it would have had on the bodies and how they look, but also the unfortunate events over the past 2 months are making it a little bit difficult. And we understand that the government is also giving them extra assistance in terms of like counseling, but also putting resources where it matters and trying to cushion the impact of the disaster that they're responsible for.
Thank you so much, Vuyo. Vuyo joining us, and of course is going through to where we're looking at now, back to the Waterkloof Air Base. Griselda, what do you have for us?
Well, thank you very much to you once again, Alicia, and the aircraft is still parked right in front of us here. You'd know, of course, due to the fact that it would be quite insensitive for our cameras to be towards the part where those mortuary vans are going to come off. You know, we are expecting the mortuary vans to come off that aircraft anytime soon, and the aircraft itself will be cleaned. A decontamination process, of course, will take place as well. Those mortuary vans will, of course, go into the hangar where they will remain there until the official program starts at 3 o'clock this afternoon. But just to give you a bit of a background about, you know, what happened, where is this church, where was this church formed and when? Now, the Synagogue Church of All Nations was formed in 1987 after a small gathering of about 8 members came together to hold a meeting in a shelter in Lagos in Nigeria. Now, the church was first held in a makeshift congregation iron and thatch building, and has grown, as you would know, that thousands of people. And you'd know that after the collapse of this, there's already been from South Africa, according to some of the members that spoke to my colleague a little bit earlier on, Ayanda Ali Peng, said there have been 8,000 applications to go back to Nigeria to this church. But this church has grown and is now housed in a massive multi-story building, and it has several guest houses, of course, that being one of those that collapsed on that day. Now, these guest houses are actually attached to this multi-story building, which is the church. Now, these are also used to accommodate international visitors, and every year, the Synagogue Church of All Nations hosts thousands of national and international visitors in its headquarters. Now, the roof of this church, just to give you some background, was blown off by a storm, and the second church was washed away by a flood, while the third church also collapsed due to severe weather conditions. And certainly what will take the spotlight after all of this is what really happened on that day. More investigations need to take place into what happened on that fateful day. Why did that multiple story building collapse? And certainly some of the structural experts that we have spoken to have really criticized the church for saying that despite the church being very influential, not just on the continent but around the world, you'd know that local and international visitors frequent the church, that they didn't take the necessary procedures to ensure that the structure itself was safe for all of those people inside, and that the guest houses that are attached to this church are in a proper condition. Certainly lots of condemnation has come for the church members there also, but for now we are expecting these mortuary vans to go inside the hangar. That's where they will remain for the next few hours. We're expecting the families of those loved ones to come here at about after 12, shortly before 1 o'clock, in what's expected to be such an emotionally charged ceremony for the very first time after 2 months. Such grave difficulty, not knowing what will happen next for their loved ones, that today finally there will be some closure. We're also expecting the Deputy President of the country, of course, to grieve with these family members, and of course to give them some assurance that the South African government will repatriate the remainder of the bodies that are in Nigeria, and that there should be some answers to what really happened there. We're expecting the Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa, to preside over that. So there'll also be a dead march that will take place here, Alicia. A dead march in which the mortuary vans will drive around a particular area. The relatives of those victims, of course, will look on as that dead march is taking place. But of course, all of that will take place at about 3 o'clock this afternoon. But emotionally charged, and really South Africans saying it's been too long. But finally, something has happened. The South Africans, at least not all of them, but majority of them, are home. But there certainly need to be answers about what really happened in this disaster, considered to be really one of the worst disasters to ever affect a place of worship. But there's not much from where I can see from where I'm standing at the moment, Alicia. But certainly what is taking place on the other end there is the fact that the mortuary vans will then now be removed from there. And what will happen at a much later stage, of course, is that once these bodies have been taken to the various state mortuaries around the country, the places or the homes of the victims of this disaster, of course, private funerals will be arranged by these individual families who will bid their loved ones a farewell. Certainly something they've been waiting too long to happen.
Marco. Now, you've just spoken about a very interesting issue here, the remaining bodies. Do you know why they were not brought at this stage? And of course, when can we expect them to be repatriated?
Well, Alicia, certainly I did put that question to the Minister in the Presidency, Jeff Radebe, when he arrived here at the Waterkloof Air Force Base this morning. And what he says is that the identification process still needs to take place for the remaining bodies in Lagos in Nigeria. But certainly what they're trying to make sure is that they are properly identified and that they're 100% sure that those are the South Africans that were involved in that Lagos disaster. And certainly, I mean, you would want that to take place before you find yourself in a situation where the wrong bodies are being repatriated to South Africa. So quite understandable in that sense as to when that will actually take place. The Minister was not able to answer that at this stage. As he says, the process is still going on, that identification must still happen. And I'm sure as soon as that is done, further communication will take place, and it will be known when the remainder of those bodies. But it's certainly a bitter pill to swallow for some of these families, in that they've been waiting for more than 2 months at the moment, and clearly there's going to have to be another wait at this stage. But certainly there would be some assurances, I would think, from the Deputy President of the country this morning to say to these families it's going to be a bit of a wait. I know that communication has already gone out to the families who will not be receiving bodies here at the Waterkloof Air Force Base here this morning or into this afternoon as well. But a sense of anxiety is what we understand from when the Social Development Minister had visited the family members who are housed in different hotels here in the Gauteng province, and many of them raising questions about what happens next. How does government plan to help them next? What about the children of some of the families who've now been left alone? There are no parents left in those homes, but government is saying that their job goes way beyond what will be taking place here today. It started with the repatriation, now an official ceremony to release these bodies to their families, and afterwards a lot of work still needs to be done as well. But the concern that is also being raised is about the increased somewhat demand by some South Africans, despite the disaster that happened in Nigeria, to return to the church. What you'll actually know is that just a few days after that disaster as well, we saw some people that SABC News had actually interviewed who wanted to go back to the church in Nigeria, saying they feel they need to go back there to find answers and also to pray over what exactly has happened. So really a lot of scrutiny will be placed on TB Joshua's church and what happens next, and where to for these families as they bury their loved ones after waiting such a long time, a grief of 2 months. People that we've spoken to, some of the families, saying that they don't know where to go to from now. It was supposed to be a prayer that they were attending for good health, for various things that people would attend the church for, to be exorcised of demons and a host of things, for spiritual cleansing at TB Joshua's church. But it was a day of tragedy, so many South Africans dying. We also saw President Jacob Zuma sending his condolences, of course, to the families, saying this is quite a disaster of great magnitude, and condolences, of course, sent to those families. But that's what we're expecting to take place here today, and there will be quite a break. We will not be able to broadcast, of course, what will take place inside that hangar for obvious reasons, and that there needs to be some dignity away from the cameras, and that the decontamination and the removal of those bodies, of course, we certainly cannot bring you those broadcasts. But of course, we will be live again from 2:30 this afternoon, when the official program, prayer session as well, presided over by the Deputy President, will get underway. But a very somber mood here at the Waterkloof Air Force Base, but also quite a lot of relief. Relief, I understand, from government officials who are saying that it was so important for them not to return empty-handed to South Africa? What do you tell families that have been grieving for so long? What do you say after having gone to Nigeria with such a massive team to facilitate the repatriation process? Many challenges that the South African government had to put up with. We've heard a lot as well from the minister in the presidency, Jeff Radebe, who had given several press conferences about the updates about how many South Africans were going to return. Only confirmed very late last night, I must say, Alicia, that it would now be 74 of those being repatriated.
All right, and of course, while we look at those visuals coming to us live from the Waterkloof Air Base, of course, Nozintombi, just our parting words now. The process has been so strenuous on the families, and Chrisetta just touched on a very important word, relief and closure. Do you think this will finally bring the families closure?
Undoubtedly, Alicia, this is a triumph for the country, for the government of South Africa, that despite all the logistical problems in getting the repatriation of the bodies of the mortal remains of those people who died in that church, this was a triumph. And now that the bodies are back on South African soil, it's time for us to mourn as a country and to give support to those families whose loved ones have died. And it's going to be a long road ahead for us to come to terms with what had happened. There needs to be investigations. There needs to be some form of answers given to those families as to really what happened to their loved ones, what really happened. And we need to get answers from TB Joshua. We need to get answers from the church as well.
Absolutely, all right. And of course, we're going to leave you with Tumelo Mototwane, with the AM News team now, as we salute you out on Media Monitor. And of course, condolences to all the families of the bodies that are being repatriated today. For myself, Alicia Jali, and the Media Monitor team, goodbye. All right, we will be taking Criselda. Let's have you back on the line. Let's see what's happening at the Waterkloof base airport now. Criselda, what do you have for us, the latest?
Well, thank you very much to you once again, Alicia, live from the Waterkloof Air Force Base, where the bodies of the 74 South Africans who were repatriated from Lagos in Nigeria have finally arrived. Hope, relief, and certainly a day that the families of these South Africans have been waiting for the past 2 months now, wanting to bury their loved ones in dignity as well. I'm sure you can see there on your screen the aircraft itself getting some of, or waiting rather, for these mortuary vans to come off that plane.
Let's talk about closure once again. What should South Africans learn about this tragic incident?
Well, South Africans should certainly learn that beliefs are very important, but at the same time, we shouldn't have blind faith. There should be a level of intellect, a level of maintaining some sort of sense when it comes to blind faith. We cannot be having, in this day and age, issues of our priests talking about giving their worshippers petrol that tastes like pineapple juice. It's an indictment on the state that we're in, that our beloved South Africans had to fly all the way to a different country to go and seek some sort of relief because of spiritual growth, because they need financial assistance, because of the sheer dire sadness and absolute desperation that people are in. So in terms of that, we as South Africans, we need to rally behind these families as a nation. And we need to go back to the basic concepts of Ubuntu. What led these people to be in such a desperate state that they felt that seeking divine intervention at their peril would be the best way for them to get some sort of guidance. It's absolutely shocking that we have people in this country that are that desperate, and we are not doing anything to help people move beyond that. We should be a caring nation, especially considering that the history that we come from, the history of apartheid, the history of sadness, the history of loss that we just come from only 20 years ago. We need to, as a nation, take this opportunity and say enough is enough. We are going back to being a caring country. We're going back to caring about those people who are in such dire and desperate situations. And it starts with one small act of kindness. And that will create a ripple effect. And we will be dealing with the issues that we have as a nation instead of people going outside of our borders to try and get some sort of relief.
And we have to bring in your point there, Nozindumi, because people were blaming the South African government as if, you know, they said go out there and be in this tragedy, but it didn't happen like that. So we really need to think about the things that we do, and also not to just, you know, lambast our government on their great efforts, because really these people are coming back today through their efforts.
2 months for the South African government to get the mortal remains back. It talks to the sheer amount of logistical problems. We have seen that the government has tried their best to communicate with the media, with South Africans about what they're doing each and every single step of the way. And Nigeria is a sovereign country, and we cannot just go willy-nilly and decide on how we're going to repatriate those bodies.
Thank you so much, Nozindumi. We're going to leave it there and cross back live now to Griselda, who's standing by at the Waterkloof Air Force Base. Griselda, over to you.
Thank you very much once again, Alicia. The visuals that you're seeing on your screen are live from the Waterkloof Air Force Base. You can see the aircraft, the back of the aircraft there opening, and I'm sure in just a few minutes we will see those 4 mortuary vans with the remains of the 74 South Africans coming off there. You can see some of the personnel assisting there before those vehicles do come out. There are, of course, 4 other vehicles that are inside that aircraft. Inside the 4 other trucks, you have equipment that was used in the repatriation process. But to explain just a bit about how even more devastating this disaster could have been in terms of the effects at the time of this disaster, there were more than 300 South Africans who were at the Synagogue Church of All Nations. A demand from South Africans who often go for spiritual healing to TB Joshua's church, and a very prominent church. Some of the people who, well-known personalities and politicians who have visited this church before would include your King Goodwill Zwelithini, the king of the Zulu nation. Winnie Madikizela Mandela has been to the church as well. The leader of the economic freedom fighters, Julius Malema, you know, as well as the South African gospel star, Sechaba Padi, you know, Depoor Peters as well, the Minister of Transport, is also one of the people who has visited that church. So the devastation certainly could have been so much more with the numbers of South Africans who were at the church. I'm sure in the next few minutes we will see those mortuary vans come out from this aircraft here at the Waterkloof Air Force Base there. And certainly something that will bring great relief to these families who've been waiting for so long. As we've been indicating, Alicia, we can't stress that enough, in that the families that we have spoken to, many have waited for months, and in the run-up to when the South African government had communicated that it will be repatriating these bodies, the interviews that we often did with these family members saying that all they want is some kind of closure. And you could see the devastation in the very beginning when flights came through from OR Tambo International Airport, and the flights would disembark, and none of the loved ones of some of these individuals who will be here today to grieve their family members, were not on those aircraft. They're on an aircraft of a different kind here this morning, an aircraft in a mortuary van, certainly badly decomposed, we understand, in that, but the closure that these families will get from this moving forward is that their loved ones are finally back home. And certainly these families would want to know, moving forward, what government's plans, of course, would be moving forward in this regard. I'm just going to take a look at our monitor just to monitor what's happening there as well. But certainly, these families who will come here today will be for the very first time able to feel this pain of their loved ones returning in body bags, not exactly the way that they had wanted things to be, in that obviously anybody who's going to attend a church service, you go there for spiritual healing and a host of other reasons. But these families returning here now, very difficult. But, the South African government saying that it's been quite a difficult task for this repatriation process. We've asked questions relating to whether South Africa and Nigeria are on good terms, in particular at this stage over the delay of this repatriation. I mean, the minister in the presidency, Jeff Radebe, has often said that this pain is indescribable that these family members are experiencing. So it's important for this process, of course, to take place here today. The ceremony this afternoon will start with a rendition of the national anthem. The deputy president, of course, is going to be here. The families will also be here as well. A dead march will take place. But for now, as those mortuary vans disembark, they will go into the hangar where they will remain for the next couple of hours for the ceremony to take place. But definitely going to be quite an emotional one for these families, and indeed for the whole country, because many of these, that's just a shot of the hangar that we wanted to show you. That's the hangar, or the closed structure where these mortuary vans will go into. The decontamination process will take place there. Of course, the health department has been quite involved in this repatriation, in that, of course, issues relating to death certificates as well that needs to be issued to these families, where these bodies will go after the ceremony is done here this afternoon. They need to be taken to the various provinces in order for these families to make arrangements for the various funerals of these 74 people. But as to when the remainder of the South Africans will return, certainly that remains to be seen, and certainly government will communicate that at a later stage, but the identification process of that certainly does continue. But, speaking about the church, the Synagogue Church of All Nations, relating to, TB Joshua, and, across the world, people are said to be attracted by his purported healing powers and prophecies. He preaches to massive crowds at this mega church in Ikotun. That's where the church is based, every week. And, according to the website, the Scone website, the Synagogue Church of All Nations website, it hosts thousands of national and international visitors each year. People travel from around the world to witness and receive from the mighty work that God is doing in the life of a prophet TB Joshua. Of course, all of that stated, on the website of TB Joshua's church. And on the 16th of September in 2014, on TB Joshua's Facebook page, there was something that was posted on there, reportedly coming from him, that indicated that these were hard times that may test him, but they cannot destroy him. I suppose suppose, responding to much of the criticism as well that he's received, not only from South Africa, around the world, also from other South African pastors as well. We know that Pastor Ray Macaulay of the Rema Bible Church, believed that Joshua, did not show accountability. That's what he was basically saying. TB Joshua was one of those who was scathing against TB Joshua. Ray Macaulay, that is, rather, saying that he believed that Joshua did not show accountability for the disaster, and basically saying that TB Joshua should fully cooperate with authorities in investigating the tragedy. Pastor Nala as well, who's a popular KwaZulu-Natal pastor, or the Nala Mandate International, defended TB Joshua. Well, he believed that the Synagogue Church of All Nations tragedy was unfortunate, and that, since no pastor would wake up and wish that any disaster like that could happen to members of their families. But certainly a day of high emotion expected here at the Waterkloof Air Force Base. The families of these loved ones in the next few hours will come here, and for the very first time, that pain is expected to be quite piercing, in that this day has finally come. A day of closure is what these families are seeking. This is the first phase of healing for these families whose loved ones had simply gone to a church service and it all ended in disaster.
Criselda, culture is a very big thing in South Africa. Are the families aware that they can't do, of course, their cultural practices in terms of what they do when they're burying the bodies? All right, unfortunately, we can't seem to be heard there by our reporter on the scene, Criselda Lewis. And unfortunately, we have to wrap it here. And I'm going to have to leave you with, of course, Ms. Tumelo Mototwane, who's with the AMU. She will be continuing with, of course, the arrival of the 74 South Africans that survived, that actually perished in the TB Joshua Church collapse in Nigeria. Tumelo Mototwane, it's over to you.